It really is great to see you. Hi, Bram. How are you?
I'm doing as well as can be expected under the present limitations of life.
Yeah, it's been quite something to get used to, and a whole new way of thinking and existence. But you've been taking advantage of that, haven't you? Riding your bike and getting lots of fresh air.
I have never spent more time outdoors in my entire life.
Yeah,
So
that's great.
I'm reinventing my day-to-day existence very much. I mean, everybody is. You see everybody sitting outside having birthday parties in the park with blankets on, and and everybody's life right now is outdoors.
It's forcing us to connect better than we ever were before. If you think of how we're connecting only through technology and things, but now we're going outside and we're seeing people in person because we're really starved for that.
You're not kidding.
Yeah.
Starved is the right word.
Huh. Yes. Well, it's been amazing working with you. I've I'm thinking about 8 years now that we've been working together since I first reached out to you. And I can't believe the amount of material we've covered together. We've just gone through so much stuff. Operas, whole entire operas you've helped me with, art song, oratorio, and now or lately more modern music than ever before, including the Andre Previn that you helped me with before I recorded it. And now I'd say we're fully into the modern music with the Morowitz now. Is that something different for you?
No, it isn't really different for me. I have a pretty broad appreciation of music. And first of all, Oscar Moravitz was a teacher at the Faculty of Music when I was a student there. I've had classes with him. I remember how eccentric and how brilliant he was. And that made this piece even that much more meaningful because I remember him quite well. He was a very colorful man. And so, no, modern music is not a new thing for me. I mean, I try to be as open as possible. And this piece, it follows in the tradition of Eastern, Middle European, uh, late Romantic, going into more of the contemporary composition techniques that were developed in the last sort of 60 years. But I was able to identify with it really. I mean, it's an orchestral score, so anytime you're dealing with an orchestral score on the piano, you sort of have to make it accessible to yourself so that it doesn't feel as if it's just like, it can be so artificial when you're playing an orchestral score. And after a while, I tire of playing operas on the piano because it's just, anyway, I've done it a long time. But this, I enjoyed this experience much more, playing Oscar's music on the piano. It wasn't difficult for me to access it musically or emotionally. I felt it right from the very beginning, I think.
That's great. I first brought it to you in 2017, I think, and
Well, that's what you said, yeah.
we worked on it for a little while, then we set it aside, and then we picked it up again, and it's kind of been like that ever since, with between other pieces of music and school and all of that. What were your first thoughts when I brought this music to you?
My first thoughts were that maybe you had overstepped yourself a bit. And I didn't know how much, but yes, I had reservations. I mean, I had gotten used to your voice to a degree as a light high soprano. And this piece was, of course, written for voices like Judith Forrest, Lois Marshall. When Lois was singing this, her voice had already transferred really from being a high soprano to, she always had that lower middle range, even when she was a soprano. It was a very full voice, and Judith Forrest was a pretty dramatic mezzo soprano.
Right.
So I had reservations, and I knew that you were always somebody who aimed to do everything. and there was no limitations on what you really felt you wanted to do. And while I admired that, I thought at the beginning, that this time you had really overstepped yourself and you would be walking into an area that you might find yourself forcing your voice to achieve the dramatic results that Oscar had wished through this music. So I had my reservations, yeah.
Yeah, I remember. And
Yeah,
even though it's written for, it does say on the front cover that it's written for soprano or mezzo soprano.
but
Um,
it's the kind of voice, you see.
yes, yes. And but we did talk about the timbre of my voice and how it might possibly still work when you consider that it's reflecting a young girl, right?
To a musical context, which was very thick and rich.
Mhm.
Anyway, obviously my point of view has changed and evolved because you convinced me. And it was because of your work in convincing me that I became totally a believer in the fact that even with my reservations, I saw, yes, Kira can bring this music. And I think maybe that I was challenging you and saying I didn't know if you really could do it,
Mhm.
maybe that pushed you in a positive way to show me that, yes, I can do this. And you did. Of that, I mean, I mentioned to you when you sent me the recording that you made after I had sent you my recording of the piano accompaniment, and
Mhm.
I said to you at the time, which I meant, that I felt it was of all the things that I've heard you do, whether it would be recorded or live, it was the piece that I felt, ironically, that you were able to get to the heart of, um, and really find the essence of what the words were saying and and allow your voice to really probe that in a very profound way. I mean, obviously, this text is troubled. This is a deeply moving text and a deeply felt musical interpretation by Oscar. And it's not pretty. And in the old days, I always used to simply think of your voice as a useful, you're not as useful as you might have been, but you kept your voice young. And I mean that as a compliment, not as a detriment. And that has allowed you to sing so healthfully and as a useful sound to me, and so I was so totally delighted that this youthful sound, which was always beautiful, Kira, showed a quality that I had not heard to that extent. I heard glimpses of it, but um, I didn't. I didn't hear to that profound nature the what you showed me.
Hmm.
I was surprised and I was delighted. And I was very moved, frankly. I was extremely moved when I heard you sing that. I was amazed, really. I thought, this is the same Kira Braun. So it showed me again that people can change. They can find aspects of their own artistry, of their own personality that under circumstances they can rise so much higher than they ever
Mhm.
might have themselves imagined, certainly than I imagined. So I guess that's the bottom line, that I have been proved wrong and I'm glad.
That's so nice to hear. I can't tell you what that means to me coming from you as someone I've admired and looked up to and had as a mentor for so long. And yes, I am darn stubborn when I get
Yes,
into my head that there's something I want to do. Um, and at first I was like crestfallen, thinking, oh, maybe I really can't do this. But those glimpses that you mentioned, I think I've always felt like those glimpses were there. of that voice that I could bring. And when it did happen for me, and I recognized and I felt those glimpses, it was like a breakthrough each and every time. And now I feel like I've crossed over the threshold and I can find that depth and find that color in my voice now for this piece in particular more and more when I need it, when I need to call on it. So I'm glad that you said what your heart thought. You know, you didn't hide what you were thinking, and you were very, very honest with me, and I really appreciate that. It's all part of the learning curve.
That's very, very true. It is part of the learning curve. And it's amazing when you find things. I mean, I'm still at nearly 70 years of age, I'm finding things within my own playing, luckily, that I haven't stopped learning. This past year, which I've been retired from the conservatory, and COVID means that you can't go very far.
Yeah.
There are no live concerts. So I'm also so pleased that I'm finding things within my own work as you did. And it's always amazing. Like it's a revelation when you find those things that you go, where did they come from? Yeah, I mean, you were a revelation. And you, I guess I challenged you in a big way because
Yep.
I wasn't very convinced at the beginning. And you were pretty upset. I know you were very upset the day that you left. And I thought, what did I do to poor Kira? I mortified her. Even though I was speaking very truthfully, I thought, well, sometimes truth is not the very best thing, maybe. And I should have just somehow not said what I said. But in doing that, you rose to the occasion
Hmm.
and allowed yourself to open up. That's it. You opened yourself up because you, in order to achieve this enormous emotional range and vocal range, they're both the same. You need, you have to enter it into a very deep way. It's not surface at all. You had to find something within yourself. Who knows what that something is? I mean, we all find it differently, but you changed by doing this piece.
Yes, I think reading the diary really helped me as well. And
Yeah.
I've always felt very, very compassionate about this subject. And when Claudia sent me the music, I knew that I had to do this music. So I've been driven to do it for quite some time, and
Yeah.
I'm glad that we are where we are with it now. It's so exciting to be embarking on something different like this. It's certainly not Mozart, but
No.
it's quite exciting to be working on this music and now to be bringing it to fruition after all this time dreaming about it.
Yeah.
When we picked it up last fall, we had to set it down, and but then we were about to pick it up again and COVID came along, so that kind of put a damper on our things. I wasn't able to visit in person, and I was so happy when you agreed to record it for me so that I could practice along to your recording at home here and send you clips as I figured them out. And so that back and forth was a whole process in itself.
It was an enormous process of learning for me.
Oh, I can't imagine what that must have been like. And I was going to ask you, what was that process like for you? What kinds of things did you go through? I would love to know.
Well, I mean, any time that you work with as a collaborative artist, which I've done for so long, your mind has to be split 50-50 between the piano that you're playing, and if it's a singer, you have to hear in your own head that singer's voice. And in this case, I really had to hear everything. I had to, I mean, I was imagining how we had done it a somewhat. So
Mm-hmm.
I had a bit of an idea, but because it was never secure, I sort of had to envisage how it could work in your voice. And to allow you to breathe in certain places that were very important,
Mhm.
to push the tempo where it needed to be pushed so that you would get through the phrases. Um, and as you remember, when I was playing it, I recorded it, and I would do one of two things. If the music demanded it, I would either play and somehow keep a beat going with my left hand while I was playing. So I had three hands while I did that. Two hands to play the piano, one hand to snap the beat.
Yeah.
So I would either do that because it's so rhythmically complex that by itself, without a conductor or doing it in person, I don't think that you'd be able to actually fit it together. But so I tried to keep a rhythmic pulse, and sometimes I would play the vocal line with the accompaniment just so that we could hold it together, because it's the rhythmic structure which was so um, complex, as
Yeah.
is all the music from our 20th 21st century. I mean, it's not dum da dum da dum. I mean, it's all kinds of amazing syncopations, and the tempos changed a
Mm,
great deal.
I did.
um, and within that, we have to make it somehow a fluid thing. So I played it as best as I could in such a way, and then bless your heart, somehow you were able to put that recording into your own voice. I mean, I was amazed when you sent it to me, and I thought, this sounds like we're actually together in the room. I mean, I was stunned at how well you were able to do it. Stunned. Uh, I was amazed. I mean, I did my best to try to facilitate you being able to record it, but you again exceeded my expectations as to such complexities in the rhythm to make it work. You internalize my piano part, and just as I try to internalize your voice part. The good thing about working this way, you have to know the other person's part inside out. So in terms of learning, it actually makes you so much more of an independent artist. I mean, when you're working together and you're 3 feet apart, you feed off each other, and your eyes are together, and we breathe together. But when you're not in the same room and it's this complex, it's not Haydn or Mozart, or Schubert or Fauré. You really have to study the score and say exactly where does this rhythm fit into my vocal part. Even though I was trying my best to show you the path, you figured it out, so much of it on your own. And as a result, it sounded really confident. It sounded like you meant every single phrase that you sang. I was again knocked out. It didn't sound like that you were nervous when you were doing it. You sounded like a convincing artist who had a very profound text and was delivering it with total conviction. And of course, I hope that eventually we will be able to do it together, and we'll be able to take it even further. But already you've gone so far. It's to attribute to your artistry that you've been able to do this, and your stubbornness.
Thanks, Bram. Yeah, those snaps really helped, and obviously the vocal line did too, especially in the spots where there is absolutely no accompaniment below
Oh,
the
then,
singer's voice. Then I really needed that in order to come in
yes,
again at the right time. And I just can't imagine what it's like to uh, really make the sound of a whole symphony on the piano. That's incredible. So kudos to you. And I also know that you're not a big fan of doing things that aren't together like this. You know, we've talked about what
yes.
this whole new age of everybody collaborating remotely is like, and it's weird, it's not comfortable. Is it real music making? I think to me it felt like real music making because I did put my heart and soul into it and really tried to follow along with you. But yes, I had to internalize the the piano part,
I don't,
definitely. But I'll tell you, now that we're transitioning ahead and I'm hearing the orchestral parts, it's a whole new ball of wax.
Yeah.
It's very, very different to be now singing along with some orchestral clips. I don't even have the whole thing yet, just a few clips that I've been able to work on. And it's so exciting to be making that transition now into that. I wanted to ask you, what's your favorite passage in the piece? There must be one or two spots that really, brought you to an amazing feeling or one of intense
No,
emotions.
I'd have to look at my score. I mean, if you allow me to look at the score, I can't remember anything right now because the, there were so many places. I mean, for me, the text, of course, is also very personal. I mean, I have, I was born in 1951, 6 years after the war, and I was a product of the relatively early baby boomers. And because I've always been a very good amateur historian, the entire saga of what happened just before I was born in the war was very close to me. So all of the text I found and all the music. I mean, if you wait, I should have had the score, but maybe I can answer your question if you give me a moment. Well, of course, the ending is beautiful. The final adagio. There's an orchestral section towards the end, which is beautiful, instrumentally scored. First an oboe, and then glockenspiel, and then there's a solo violin, and it's very expressive. And then these final translucent chords at the very last page. And then you come in and you say at the end, I pray for all the Jews and for all those in need. And I mean, the entire piece is very moving, but certainly that final espressivo, this is rehearsal 42. It's a very, very beautiful part in the orchestra. There's a lot of rather dramatic and angry music in this, which is, and they're all very, very haunting. But I can't even remember how it goes now, but let me see. And then the oboe. This. Those. And then the oboe. It just, obviously the music is getting higher and higher and there's no bass. It simply is all treble at the end. The only time the bass comes in is at the very end. When you talk about that I pray for all the Jews, but up until then, it's as if you can sense the music is arriving at this stratosphere somewhere spiritually above the earth and looking down upon it. Yes, looking down upon the earth. And it's a particularly haunting part because so much of it is fairly loud and angry and despondent.
Yeah.
And here it's a prayer at the end. And it keeps on saying, I pray, I pray, I pray. And Oscar's music prays softly. And at the end, of course, it disappears into nothingness, into the ether, shall we say. So that is a very special part. I mean, there's so many terrifying parts of it, which are very intense, with a lot of very angular parts in the orchestra. Um, and the beginning is also beautiful. There's this, it comes out of nothing when you say yesterday evening before I fell asleep.
Mm.
And there's these shimmering chords in the orchestra. So the beginning, the end, interestingly enough, they both start without any bass. They both are only in the treble, if you look at the piano part. And then there's a lot of angry bass, trombones, etc., etc., etc. But the beginning and the end are floating somewhere. So we start and we end in sort of the same kind of place, in a spiritually floating somewhere up in the sky.
It's like a reverse arc, isn't it? We start at those high points, the ethereal parts, the prayer or the dream, and then in the middle we're pulled down and into the depths of despair. And what strikes me about Anne's words are that she's very selfless in the way that she wrote it. She doesn't just think of herself. She's not just praying for herself, for her own safety. She is including everyone, and not even just Jewish people, for all
Yeah,
those in need, she says. And
yeah,
for a girl of 14 years of age at that time, and with that kind of uh, just frightful future ahead of her, which she couldn't possibly have known would happen, but she had an idea of where things could go. For her to think outside of herself, that's huge. And that's what
yes.
I think of when I'm singing it. I think of how she must have been feeling, and how big her heart must have been.
Well,
That
that's why she's become maybe the icon from that period, from the war. I mean, there's got to be a reason why her story has endured. And she always tried to see the best. I mean, that famous line in her diary that she still believes in, that people are basically good at heart, you know. And to be able to say that, it's not in this music, but it's a very famous line.
yeah.
And as you just said, she thinks of others. For a young girl looking around with such despair, um, the humanity of this young girl. So she's become the icon of selflessness,
Yes.
uh, for the war, for so many tens of millions who died as she did.
Yeah. Yeah. And the most ironic part is the fact that at the very beginning, when she's dreaming about her friend, she sees her friend, they actually did meet in the camp at the very end. And Anne was so sick at the time, she didn't survive, but her friend did. And that sticks with me too as a really poignant part of what this really means. That's
I mean, it's important. The older I get, the more important I feel that stories like this must never be forgotten. And I think Oscar Moravec, coming from Czechoslovakia after the war, he understood that very much.
mhm.
He came to Canada about 1950, something like that. Um, and he was very close to the subject matter. And and he was able to really go inside this young girl's soul, and I hope it's not ever forgotten. So I'm
Yeah.
also feeling a sense of gratitude to you, because you wish to keep this story, this young girl, and this music in front of the public. It's essential that we never forget, and so for that I am eternally grateful for you wanting to do this.
Thank you for doing it with me, for helping me. Huh.
Well,
It's been
no, I'm grateful for you to do this piece, and I'm glad I was wrong.
Thanks, Bram. I love you.
Love you.
I I don't know where we're at with the schedule, but it's going to be really soon that we're going to start pulling musicians in and
Mhm.
asking for them to make the final recordings. So we'll be in touch for sure. And
All
I'm
right, my dear.
so excited. I can't wait for
Yes,
that to
I,
happen.
I look forward to it very much.
Yeah. Well, thank
Okay,
you for spending time with me today and talking about the piece, about your memories of Oscar and what this music means to you. It means a lot, a very lot to me to have you with me on this ride. Thank you, Bram.
you're welcome, Kira. We'll talk soon.
Okay.
Bye, my dear.
Bye-bye.